The Creatives with AI podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Creatives with AI podcast. I'm your host, David, and on today's show, I have Nadio Granata, who's a fellow at the Chartered Institute of Marketing and who just wrote the CIM Level 6 Award in AI Marketing. We have a really interesting conversation and we talk about how AI is changing or has changed the way marketing is done and what new skills marketers need to have over the next few years if they want to continue to be successful. It's a great conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started.
The Creatives with AI podcast, the spiritual home of creatives curious about AI and its role in their future.
Nadia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I feel very honoured to be on your podcast, David. Having seen or listened to so many of your previous interviewees, it's very, very honoured.
Well, thank you very much. How's life on the boat these days?
It's not bad. We're reaching that part of the year now where it gets a bit tricky.
Yeah.
So a couple of storms recently just made it a little bit tricky. My lawn blew off the other day. So
yeah, nice one. Just for people listening, Nadio and I know each other a little bit, and actually I went out to see him last week on the boat. So I've experienced. What's the name of the boat again?
The Gabriella Sofia.
Right. So I've been on the Gabriella Sofia myself, and it was lovely. It was really, really nice. So awesome. Nadia, the reason I wanted to have you on, a couple things. You're involved in a couple really, really interesting things that I think the listeners will also find interesting. I know you're a fellow at the Chartered Institute of Marketing and that you've been working on an AI course for them. So I really want you to talk about that. But I have some other questions about, more general questions about, people who are marketers or who do marketing for their own businesses and those sorts of things. Like, what are the changes they're going to need to make over the next few years and what skills are they going to need to develop? But before we get into all that, maybe if you just do a quick introduction and kind of give a little bit of your background and sort of, how you got here to where you are today. And if we do, just a couple of minutes on that, and then we'll dig into the meat of it.
Okay. Thanks, David. Yeah. Nadio Granata, not a typical name for somebody from Huddersfield in West Yorkshire. So I'm half Italian, half English, but I was born in the UK, went to a convent school just outside Milan when I was a young child for about 2.5, 3 years. My dad worked over there. He was in catering. And we came back to West Yorkshire, and subsequently I continued my schooling in West Yorkshire and had to learn English. And then by the time I was 15, I was ready for off. I was restless. School wasn't really doing it for me, or more likely I wasn't doing it for school, to be fair. And I left home when I was 15, but you're not allowed to do that in the UK. You're not allowed to. So on my 16th birthday, I left school and I left home. And big hug with my mum, and off I went. And I found myself on a beach in Bali about a year or so later, where I bumped into Boris Johnson. I spent 3 days with Boris. Don't tell anybody that, though. Spent 3 days with Boris.
No way.
And two other guys. And we're basically, we were backpackers, and we stayed in what I think they call them lodgements or pensions or something in Bali on Kuta Beach. And then Boris went backpacking round wherever he went, God knows whatever he got up to. And I went on to Sydney with the other two guys who were already friends from the UK. Because I was a chef at the time, I got into catering. I followed my dad into catering. And I got a job straight away in Sydney, just over the bridge there in North Sydney, as a breakfast chef. So I was up at 4 a.m, but I was on Bondi Beach by about 10, so that wasn't too bad.
Oh, that's nice.
And spent 6 months as a breakfast chef there in Sydney. And then after 6 months, one of the guys that I'd met, called Rick, he came back to the UK to go to Cambridge University. The other guy came back to the UK to go to Oxford University. And I had no qualifications, no university to go to. So I hitchhiked all around Oz. I went up to Cooktown, Townsville, into Alice Springs, Ayers Rock, Darwin, over to Broome, Port Hedland, down to Perth and back into Indonesia and back to the UK. That took over a year. And then after about a year of being a chef, vegetable chef, over Christmas in a hotel in Huddersfield. There's a lot of peeling potatoes. I got a postcard, got one of those old things called a postcard from one of the chefs. Oh, crikey, sorry, I missed off. I worked in Sardinia. When I was 16, I worked in Sardinia. So I did Sardinia first, came back, then went to Indonesia and Australia, then came back, and then I bought a couple of bicycles with my girlfriend, and we ended up cycling to southern Egypt and back. 12,000 miles, 13 months.
That's crazy.
17 countries. We were only going to France. We're only going to France for Christmas. And the wind was blowing and the sun was shining. And once you can travel a lot, get a lot of distance with. And we were free camping. We camped in the mountains, on the rivers and the beaches. And then we went through the Sinai, the Negev, the Sahara. We actually went through the West Bank, which obviously is a subject at the moment. And we got.
So how did you wind up in marketing after all that?
Because when we traveled, believe it or not, as boring as I am, I used to write business plans. You play Cluedo or cards or dot the dot or whatever we did. But in and amongst that, I was, my dad's entrepreneurial. He had a couple of Italian restaurants. He also had a pasta factory. And so as a sort of young teenager, I used to work in those places, empty the bins, do the washing up.
Right.
And I guess I'd got an entrepreneurial streak in me. And so when we came back from our travels, we got married and had 3 children. And I opened up a pizza takeaway business. And shortly afterwards, one of my school friends who had gone to one of those things called a university had said to me, "What are you doing with all of your client information? You do pizza deliveries, you got the name, the address, the telephone number." And I said, "Well, I'm putting it all in a paper bag for the tax man." He said, "Well, why don't you put it into a database?" I'm like, whoa, what's one of those?
Right.
And I bought I was one of the first of all of my friends to buy a computer, uploaded the data into that. And a couple of years later, I was at an exhibition, a catering exhibition in Earl's Court. And some guys there were talking about computerized order taking systems, and it was revolutionary, And I rock up, and on a floppy disk, I've got 2,000 customer names, addresses, telephone numbers. So I got involved with turning that into a point of sale order taking system. My sort of toe into tech, and I ran that.
What year was that?
That was...
what year was that?
I set the business up in 88, so it would have been about 92, 93.
Just to give some context to people of kind of when we were talking about. So that's cool. So you then started putting all this stuff in a database and started to go from there.
Yeah, and we started doing these things called newsletters and things, and a little bit of desktop publishing and things like this. So running my own business, trying to grow it as much as I can. That was my introduction to it, I suppose. And I'd also worked at our pasta factory where we made fresh pasta, and we were pioneers. We used to do our own packaging, labeling, pricing, distribution, and I learned how to do all of that stuff in a family business sense. So after running my business for a number of years, I had about 40 staff part-time, many of which had gone to the local university, and I had university envy,
Of course.
I'd got a cycling proficiency certificate, which had got my name misspelled in it, and that was all that I had. So I went to evening class 2 nights a week. I was very lucky that they let me do a master's, but it was because I'd already run a business that I didn't need a first degree.
Right.
I was also, I hasten to add, I was also paying for my own degree, for the own course. So, when you pay for it, it's a bit less scrutiny goes on.
They're a little more flexible.
Yeah, and I'll never forget that interview and the guy called Giles Forbes when he asked me about business, turnover, margins, HR, et cetera, et cetera. And that was second nature to me. So, yeah, I did 2 nights a week. I ended up getting an MSc marketing management degree. There was 32 of us who enrolled, and only 7 of us actually qualified in that first tranche. Some others spent a bit longer getting their qualification. But I was like a sponge, David. I couldn't get enough. I could not get enough of this marketing theory and, buyer behavior and, I don't know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Boston growth matrix, couldn't get enough of it. And as soon as I qualified, I sold my businesses to my staff and I set up a marketing agency. We grew. It was in the old days when I think it was about 2002, and Business Link was offering a lot of grants to companies. So we got quite a lot of marketing plans, wrote a lot of marketing plans for small businesses. I knew a lot of people because, of course, a lot of people had come through my business. I'd had it for 18 years. Some of my staff had grown up. Some of those students had grown up. So I had lots of client work. To be honest, I wasn't that used to running an agency. We undercharged. So if anybody's listening to this and they got a bargain marketing plan back in 2005 or whatever, then, they can buy the beers. But I did some fabulous work, some really good work. And I've got to, thank Susan Kenyon. She was my first employer. And yeah, she took me on a part-time basis before I set up my own business. And she taught me a lot. She was brilliant. And anyway, so I ran that business for a number of years. And in and amongst that, my former lecturers at university asked me if I'd go in and do a couple of guest lectures. And 2 guest lectures became 4, and 4 became 6, and 6 became 8. And I ended up swapping. I went to become a senior lecturer at the university. I maintained a couple of my clients and kept a small marketing agency consultancy of 1, i.e. me. And that enabled me to continue to do practical marketing whilst also teaching it. I wrote a bunch of modules at the University of Huddersfield to start with. What did I write? I wrote marketing for event management, and I wrote PR and sponsorship. I was the only person that taught sponsorship. And I also wrote a master's in place shaping, which is an area close to your heart.
Yep.
As a local tradesman, as a local business owner and the founder of the Huddersfield Food and Drink Festival, which grew to 140,000 people per year. I'm passionate about place. I've travelled a fair bit, and marketers, when I was studying marketing, it was all about Coca-Cola. I think Zara entered the frame at some point in time.
All the massive case studies that they give you to study the enormous companies.
Yeah, and a lot of it was American back in those days, and I'm thinking, anyway. So I was very lucky that I was sponsored onto a course called Common Purpose. Changed my life. Common Purpose was incredible, and it's basically 12 months, 1 day a week. 1 day a month. Cohort of 32, all about leadership in the community. So you learn about governance, education, health, etc., etc. And I did that while studying my degree, and it was probably more valuable to me, certainly on a life basis. But it taught me leadership, taught me not to be afraid, taught me how to take information and analyze it in my own way. The textbooks, when you get a textbook, you start taking their analysis. But this course was like, no, it's your interpretation. You see the world differently, and you're entitled to express that. So, I became a marketing lecturer. And we also set up a degree course in Hong Kong. My chancellor at the time was Sir Patrick Stewart from Star Warsy stuff. I've never actually... No, not Star Wars. Was it Star Wars? Yeah. Star Trek. Star Trek. And I've never really seen it. But anyway, a really nice guy. And we used to call him One Take Patrick, because he introduced the university to TV advertising, and he was brilliant at it.
Right.
The university grew rapidly, and we were sent over to Hong Kong to partner with Hong Kong Management Association, and I delivered courses over there. So brilliant experience. great time. But I was itchy. I wanted to get back into industry. And I joined forces with a couple of other guys who had founded FreeServe and a guy called Simon Palin. And we launched something called Jumbleade. And Jumbleade was a portal for recycling unwanted stuff. I think you'd refer to it as Vinted now. I think there's a Vinted.
Vinted, yeah.
But we were
Or
before
Vinted,
digital cameras, and it didn't fly. It's a shame it didn't fly. It cost us a lot of money, but it was the right thing in the right direction just too soon. And I went back into academia, became a teaching fellow at Leeds University and a fellow of the Higher Education Academy, and then developed an algorithm for measuring social media performance. And credit to wasn't me who had the idea. It was somebody else who had the idea and had the technical capability. But we put this algorithm together using we took the APIs from all the major social media platforms, aggregated them, and created automated reports. That was 9 years ago.
Right.
Ahead of its time. And we launched that at Leeds Business Week, which was sponsored by a little company from San Francisco called Salesforce. And they'd helicoptered in their senior teams. They wanted to open up the UK, the north of England. And I spent 3 days with Salesforce at this exhibition, this conference. They were my first customer. They loved what we'd done. And 2 years later, I joined one of their partners in London. I moved to London and became a brand director for one of their fastest growing partners, a platinum partner called Make Positive. I oversaw the rebrand. We grew 40% in 2 years. And that sounds a lot. And it was a lot. But to be fair, Salesforce were growing 28% themselves. So, the marketing plan
it was massive. It was massive at the beginning.
Yeah.
I know there's been a lot of story here, but I really wanted you to go through that because I think one of the important aspects and one of the things that I like sort of about your story is that you started off as a practitioner, right? Like you were doing marketing before you went to school to learn about marketing because you had to make your business run.
Yeah.
And I think that ties into some of the stuff that we're going to talk about because we're at that same sort of point in history, I think, where it's really important for, I think, the people who are the practitioners who are getting down in the weeds with AI at the minute are the ones that are probably going to be successful long term because we're the ones that are actually like trying to figure it out. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And it's the same experience you will have had, running your small business. You try a flyer and you go, well, that flyer didn't work very well. And that cost me 500 quid, and then you go, okay, well, I've got to try something different. So, you were doing the hands-on kind of testing thing in the beginning, which is kind of what we're doing now. And I know that you're hugely interested in doing that. So what are your thoughts, having gone through the whole educational thing and been an instructor around sort of marketing, how do you think AI is now changing the way marketing works and the way marketing is done?
Crikey, that's a massive question. I think it is changing a lot, and it will change a lot more for those of us who embrace it and allow it. And it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. There are others who will be resistant to it. And I suppose if you look at the life cycle of AI or whatever, or I should know my model, shouldn't I? The early adopters,
Yeah.
I think we are early adopters. We're definitely not pioneers by any stretch. I might have been a pioneer when we wrote the algorithm 10 years ago, in a sense. So I think the world, it's more than marketing, David. The world will not be the same again. And I believe that to be, I know it sounds big, it sounds maybe a bit careless of me to say that, but seriously, entrepreneurs they need a toolkit, don't they? We need, if you're an entrepreneur, you need a good ally. You need a good listening ear. You don't make it on your own. You always have somebody else or something else in there. Well, you've got your sidekick, with your chat GPT or your Claude or your Bard, or if you've got your Nadio.ai, ask me anything about business and marketing, and my own chatbot will give you some answers. So when Margaret, I just wrote a long piece yesterday, a long article about paradigm shifts. And
Right.
we have been through many paradigm shifts, starting, pre-industrial revolution. But if we start with industrial revolution, in marketing, we say that our distinct eras were product, production, sales, marketing, societal marketing, and now in the 21st century, digital marketing. And Bill Gates says it's the age of AI.
Yeah.
So, is the age of AI a new paradigm? It probably is. The Internet of Things was part of the digital period. Societal marketing in the late 1990s, when we became a bit more responsible for the world in which we're living in and things like that. So lots of paradigm shifts. And in and amongst that, you look back, and this isn't a political statement, but Thatcherism took us into a free market economy. And, there used to be the manufacturing price index before that. You probably won't know because you come from a different...
No, I don't remember that. I wasn't here. I don't remember.
Prices were fixed by our manufacturers. And we've forgotten about this sort of stuff. We've forgotten about it. It's way in the past. But we became a nation of shopkeepers, a nation of entrepreneurs and small businesses. Now, you multiply that forward now. You take that forward, and we will grow even more independent businesses. I remember going to one of your sort of events, which was a smart city event in Manchester 15 years ago. Part of the, and I'd wrote the master's degree in place shaping, and as part of the research for it, and I can't remember who was speaking, but he said that our shops are going to turn into micro factories, and we will have 3D printing. And we're going, what's 3D printing? And unfortunately, I think the example at the time was a revolver. He said, you can make a gun.
Of course.
Which was not very, I think I prefer the corkscrew example. But that's where we're at. We can, go down to your high street now, and you'll see, retail shops are closing, but you will see micro businesses that can deliver services, etc. So it is changing the whole landscape, specifically for marketing. If you want to put some titles to it, hyper-personalization, hyper-targeting, hyper-automation, just stick hyper in front of stuff, and you pretty much got a handle on it.
Yeah. I think you're right. One of the things that we're seeing already, I think, is a lot of people are able to start businesses that maybe weren't able to do it before because they didn't have the time or they didn't have the knowledge. The tools like ChatGPT and Bard and the others, save so much time and so much effort. I mean, I've talked about this on the podcast before about how I use AI tools to do things like transcripts. Like transcripts, just to have a transcript of a video used to be really expensive, and it used to take days because somebody had to manually type it all out. Yeah. And they had to put, the speakers in and the times in and all that stuff. And it was a barrier to having something like a podcast because only a few people could really, had the time and the money to be able to do that, to put out a quality product. Now, in the last 9 months, 12 months, you've got all these tools out there that enable us to do these things. I mean, we'll finish this podcast tonight, and we were talking about this earlier. We'll finish this podcast tonight. I'll sit here, I'll do a rough edit of it. I'll upload the stuff. I'll get the transcripts and everything back in 30 seconds or a minute. And then it'll be ready to go. And then I just need to do a bit of the sound processing, and then, but it all moves so quickly. And I think that really is enabling a lot of people to set up new businesses and to do new things. But I also think that it's, again, it's having a big impact on things like copywriters. And this is where it kind of gets back into the marketing question, because in the past, people might have hired a ghostwriter or something to write blog posts for them and those sorts of things. So they'd actually pay someone to do that. Now they don't have to. And they can get, yes, the content that the AI tools generally generate isn't as good as you would get from a copywriter, but it's like 80% of the way there. And so just the saving of time, for people who are trying to do those sorts of things. And I guess, again, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you. And we've talked about this a lot just together And that's why I wanted to kind of bring it onto the podcast to make it a little more public. And I guess there's different types of kind of marketers. We talked about this as well, right? So there's professionals who market.
Yeah.
So there's professional marketers, CMOs, and people like that who do it for a living. You've then got business owners and small and medium-sized businesses who need to do their own marketing. So they've got sort of a separate need and a separate set of tools maybe and something that's going to have impact there. And then we talked about students as well. So, you've got the students studying it. What sort of skills do you think those three separate groups are going to need to have over the next few years? Or are they similar, or do you think they're different skills that they need to have? And what do they need to do you think?
Well, as with most of your questions are very long and very detailed, and the answers need a long time. But
just a little one.
Well, I'll try. Right. First of all, just because we can set up businesses doesn't mean to say that we should. Just because we
of course,
we are now more equipped than we used to be, doesn't mean to say that we should go ahead. Who is it? You'll know. Who was the guy that said we've all got a book in us, but it doesn't necessarily mean we should write one? Was it Hutchins?
Oh, was that Peter Hitchens?
Peter Hitchens, yeah.
I think it was Peter Hitchens.
So I think the same applies with business. So let's get so carried away just because we can write our own copy, or we can write our own marketing plan, we can write our own business plan, that the world needs the widgets that we're going to be producing.
100%. Yep.
But let's split it up. So in terms of professional marketers, chartered marketers, such as myself, then what will AI do? ML, machine learning, SaaS, what's that going to do for them? Well, we're going to be much more productive. We're going to be able, we can produce things in lightning speed. And I know this because I've done it myself. I was writing a marketing plan for a project, and actually somebody else wrote the marketing plan for me exactly a year ago, exactly to this week. Last year, Simon Kanani, super guy, he and I were putting together plans around resilience training, resilience coaching, helping companies and particularly partners in the Salesforce ecosystem to become more resilient. And he wrote the marketing plan in a day. And I'm like, what the heck? That's my job. And he'd been introduced to ChatGPT. And when he showed me the results of it, I was floored. I was very concerned. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. My children are going to lose their jobs. My 10,000 graduates I've got around the world, marketing graduates, what are they going to do? And so I spent a few months looking into it and becoming more, I suppose, can I use the word expert, more used to using it. And I became more confident that as a professional marketer, I've now got a brilliant toolkit. And if other professional marketers embrace it as I have, they too will have an amazing toolkit. But at some point, somewhere in the funnel, somebody's going to lose out. So if I can write copy and send it to a copywriter to polish rather than create, then there's some time saving there, etc. So there will be a knock-on effect. Professor Lakhani said it's not, you'll have heard this loads of times now, I guess, it's not AI that's going to put you out of a job. It's the person that's using it when you're not using it that's going to put you out of a job.
Exactly.
So professional marketers, I think they're going to need smaller teams. They're going to be more niche in what they deliver themselves. And maybe touch wood, more organizations will have more marketing plans. Because, I've never actually seen any study on this, but I bet less than 1% of the top, 1% of any British industry has got a current marketing plan. So fingers crossed, more companies will have more plans, and that will help them to steer their way through what may become an economic downturn. Individuals working within organizations who assume the role of marketing, charities, and they've got somebody that does their newsletter for them, or puts an event together, etc., etc. Well, if they're doing events, they're already probably using Eventbrite, and Eventbrite's already using some AI form in there, etc., etc. So I think individuals will become more competent within that role. That might lead to them becoming more, and I expect them to become more influential. So we've got a survey going, and hopefully you can share the link to the survey, and it's about where is the AI in you? So as you as an individual, have you got any AI in you? Are you interested in it or not? If you are, how interested and how capable are you in AI? But the same goes to your company. So, we had GDPR officers, didn't we? I mean, since Brexit, they've changed that.
Yep.
But
yeah. No, same. We've still got them.
All right. So we need these officers. So who's your AI officer? Who's AI-ifying your organization? So to me, I see that being a major new role. The natural person to do that, I guess, would be somebody who is or was in marketing. They need to be able to understand business, understand what the organization's objectives are, and then apply an AI audit to the organization. And from that AI audit, they can then put together a tactical plan. So those people are going to emerge. And then what we got, students.
Before we go on to students, can I just touch on one thing that you said? I really like what you said, and I hadn't thought about this, but you mentioned that maybe people would get better as just a passing comment along there. Do you think that, like, the people who they're not marketers, but they have to do marketing, do you think that using AI tools will actually help them? Will they learn from the AI tools? Do you think they'll be able to not only to use the tool just to say, I need to write a better newsletter, but do you think they'll actually use it to make themselves better and to actually learn from it?
Why not?
Well,
let's find parallels. Would you argue that somebody who used to use an abacus and now uses a calculator didn't learn more about maths? Or somebody who used a candle and now uses electricity? I mean, I love it.
Well, that's the example, isn't it? That, when electricity came, everybody started buying more books and borrowing them from the library, and people were learning on their own. That was just, it was just interesting, because I think there may be two camps. There's some people who they literally don't care. They just wanted to give them an answer, and, they'll take whatever it is and they'll just push it out. But I do think there's a big camp of people who will actually use it and try and learn from it. I mean, this is what I got from the students, and you will have heard this on previous podcasts, but, I had Andrew Maynard on, who was talking to, undergraduates at the University of Arizona.
I heard that.
I've talked to kids at a private school in Cambridge that I went to do a careers day to talk about AI. And what I was amazed at is the students that used AI generally didn't use it to cheat. They used it to write better papers, or they used it to understand what they were trying to learn better. And so there's a whole group of people. I think there's a group of people that they're scared of it. And so they pull up all the really negative sort of, oh no, people are going to use it to cheat, and they're going to do this, they're going to do that. But actually, I think a lot of people are using it to try and make themselves better, to help them be better at their job, or, they're not getting it to do the work for them, but they're asking it questions about the stuff that they need to do, and then they're doing it. And I think that's a huge opportunity for people. And it maybe it's a good segue into talking about students. But yeah, it's just interesting that you sort of drop that in yourself as well, that, people might get better.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that we should look back to look forward and, find parallels. And, when we started, I don't know, using the wheel, did we go, we just got better. We got better at going in the right direction quicker, and we did a bit more when we got there, and we got home sooner, maybe. I wrote a vow of positivity. No, let's rephrase that. I wrote it with ChatGPT, and I love it. It's on my website there. I love it because it says what my intention towards AI is positive, but it also says what my attitude towards any negativity towards AI. So I'm not blindly saying AI is going to solve the world's problems. And there are, some serious issues around it. So it's a balanced view, but on balance and positive. But I think, we could, let's play to the best. Let's play to, we are. I know, was it Andrew Maynard who said that we teach to the mean, we teach the average student, and that's because the whole system's geared towards, it's a production. I think universities are gonna. You're not gonna recognise universities within the next 2 to 5 years, and for good reason. Yeah. Universities, and I'm sorry to ex-colleagues or colleagues and people, but I believe passionately that we have too many students going to universities that are delivering outdated content to students who are paying extortionate rents to have that student experience that actually during COVID they didn't get, etc., etc. Is the government giving any refunds to that generation of students, etc.? So I think that rite of passage to go to a university, those days have to go, and I think apprenticeships make a lot more sense. Getting a degree in a year, getting the equivalent of a degree in why does it take 3 years to get a degree? Oh, sorry, I know why. Because children grow up, or our young people grow up in those 3 years. Well, that's a very expensive, growing up period, isn't it? £70,000 sterling debt for a degree that actually that content you could have learned in a year.
100%. And it's even worse in the US because it's 4 years. For most students, it takes 4 years to get through uni in the US. So, yeah.
So I think students will, it's on us to enable students to use every tool they can to better themselves and to better society. And if we aren't good enough to assess them in a way that prevents cheating, then it's on us, isn't it? There is Bill Gates references a English teacher in, I think she's in Virginia, and basically she allows her students to use ChatGPT. This is going back probably whatever, and they use ChatGPT and they do some amazing creative writing. But their assignment, their essay, is in the classroom. It's supervised and it's freehand.
Yeah, exactly.
So don't lose the art of writing. Don't lose the art of storytelling, and use your imagination that you've actually just had it blown sky high by using ChatGPT to take you into paradigms that you would not otherwise have been in. So good on her. Hats off to her. She's found a way of enabling students to be far more creative and yet be assessed. And we can do Vivas. Vivas are so easy to do. Why does a student have to do a 2-hour written exam?
Yeah, exactly.
Etc. Tell me what you know about marketing. Tell me, apply the Ansoff matrix to these 5, companies. And if I'm not satisfied, and then you can put that through AI as well, and you can check the voice and the eye contact and everything else.
So where do we go from here? What's next?
Well, I think we'll talk about business. We've talked about students and education, society as a whole. I mean, did you see an article only today? It was, I hope you did see it because I posted it in the AI Collective, so you should have got a notification.
I'm sure I saw it.
But it was something to do with weather forecasting.
I did see that.
AI developed weather forecast, which is now proven to be more precise than the customary way of doing it. Now, I'm sort of had a bit of a no shit Sherlock sort of moment when I saw that, because it was like, of course, that's fairly expected. We've seen developments in cancer treatment, and other health issues. So I'm an advocate of AI. I think it's great and needs to be seen. I really wish the BBC would stop pumping out this. They might do a 5-minute piece on AI, and 4.5 minutes are about, scaremongering, and then you get a little piece that talks about something good that it's done. So we need to manage public perception. We need to get behind it. Can you imagine, David, if we just invented electricity? What's the BBC going to say? Don't use this. You can make bombs out of it.
It's dangerous.
And it's like, yes, but you can also build hospitals, and you can build incubators, and et cetera, et cetera. So we need to find a better, more positive positioning on this, with its controls. With controls, of course. I'm not advocating about controls. So where do we go from here? I know where I'm going from here. I'm going to a conference tomorrow on AI and ethics, and there's been some developments in that, and I think and we're getting ever so closer to the point where we can say, look, let's put a line on it. We got it. We know the ethical considerations of AI, and we're applying it. And now, can we move on from that dialogue and get on with other things? So
yeah, shout out to Sharon Matthew, ex podcast guest as well, who's doing that.
Oh, he's a great guy, Sharon, and I'm looking forward to seeing him. I'm meeting Tim Bennett. Bennett has just developed Bobby-AI, which is your bespoke chatbot. So I've been training my chatbot for the last week. Ask it anything about marketing and AI, and it should give you a conditioned answer, a response that I have given to it, and some permissions that I've allowed it to go, which is slightly different to the other chatbot that you'll see on my website at the moment, which is a Twice one, which gathers information from ChatGPT, and that's being revised as we speak. So there's some pretty pioneering things out there. Some things aren't perfect, but they're getting there. But tomorrow we launch the new Level 6 award in marketing with AI. It's a Chartered Institute of Marketing endorsed, accredited award. It's a Level 6, which is the equivalent of a degree level. It's not, right. You don't have to do a degree in it. You do the mod itself. And I've written the content for that on behalf of the Cambridge Professional Academy. And we'll take on sign-ups for that tomorrow.
And can anyone...
on the 5th of December...
Sorry, we'll do that in a second. Can anyone register for that? Or do you have to be in the Chartered Institute, or can just people sign up?
No, you don't have to be a member. So anybody can sign up, and you'll see the criteria, the syllabus there, and the test at the end of it is a multiple choice test. So it's not it's fairly, I wouldn't say it's lower level in any sense, but it's relatively easy to get on. But it's for professionals.
Right. Got you.
It's for professionals.
I just wanted people listening to not think that, oh, well, I can't do that because I'm not a member of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. Like, anybody can go and sign up to do it. And I think that I just wanted to make that clear for people that, if you're interested in it, you can go and sign up. And yeah, I jumped in a little bit ahead. I know you were going to say on the 5th of December, you've got a webinar. So if people are interested in that, they can come to the webinar and find out more information. And then I think the course starts in January. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. 5th of December, 11 o'clock. I think I do 30-minute taster, 15 minutes Q&A, and then the course starts in January, but I think second week in January. I'm a bit vague with some of the details because I've had my head so much into writing the content. I'm like,
yeah,
it's. But it's. I mean, I've so enjoyed writing it, and I've learned a lot while I was doing it. I mean, it's 8 modules. It's basically, it takes you from what is it, how does it work, to how can I apply it. I'm very much aware of not-for-profits. I'm a co-founder of The Age of Human. I'm a massive believer in democratization of AI. I don't want my kids or any other kids that can't get onto the AI learning curve to miss out. This is 21st century. Let's give everybody equal access to AI. So we're setting up a time bank. In fact, just signed it off this evening. So there'll be a time banking facility that will enable people like us, and hopefully you and your guests and others will go, you know what, I'll give a couple of hours a month to support somebody that wants to get into AI. in the hope, because it's not a written contract, but in the hope that they'll do some good chore for somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's how the world goes round. Yeah. So we're going to have highly professional courses for professionals. I'm doing a course for NEDs, not what's a NED? Non-exec director, who needs to be AI-ified, and there's a certificate for that as well.
Okay.
Pretty intense. Short courses. So for me, what happens next is taking the knowledge that I've amassed, turning it into outputs, turning it into short courses. I'm talking with a marketing guru. Doesn't like being called a guru, but he is.
No one ever likes being called a guru.
Well, I'm happy to be the goo if you're the roux behind the goo. I'll do the goo, you can do the roux. But we're talking about putting a book together, applied AI. So,
that's a great idea. I think we're getting to that point as well, where a lot of people have talked about use cases. So what in theory could you use it for? But I think case studies now are going to become really valuable, where, we're going to see some published results of people and companies and organizations who've actually used AI in practice, and what return on investment have they actually got from that, and what are the sort of pitfalls that they've run across and things like that. And I know, we've got a couple of events coming up later in the year that I think are going to be quite interesting around that, and potentially something next summer. So yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I think it's a good time for it also. So.
Can I give a couple of examples of? I get excited about this stuff, and don't forget, I'm somebody. I left school with no qualifications, and I type with one finger. I am the slowest typer.
I've seen it.
So it's embarrassing. I've just written a 95,000 word book, all with one finger on a bloody phone.
I don't know how you do
that. But it's my relaxation. But what I was going to say. So I was with you last week when we were brainstorming something, and on a flip chart, we put some ideas together, big sheet of paper, big ideas. You'd got your contribution, I did mine, and then we took a photograph of it and uploaded it to ChatGPT and said, "Can you turn this into a discussion document?" And it
did.
That was a wow moment.
In like 10 seconds.
It did.
And I have no idea how it pulled. I mean, it got it. 90. It's not 100%, but it got 95% of what we had written down. And actually what we were trying to get to, it pulled all of that out. Yes, there were a couple little bits and details that weren't exactly perfect. But I mean, like you, I really didn't expect much from it, and was pretty amazed at what it managed to come out with.
Yeah. So on the back of that, on Monday, I was invited to, I keep forgetting, BGF. It used to be the War Office or something on the embankment. Right. It's a beautiful, significant building. And in there is a charity. I should have practiced. I should have rehearsed.
I'll put it in the show notes for everyone. Don't worry. We'll get all the details correct in the show notes.
LBST, I think it is. Anyway, so and the charity is they support young adults getting into work, and these young adults are from a background that might not otherwise have had certain opportunities. So I was invited to talk to them about, and it was part of a one-day workshop that had been put together by the Professional Academy. So I gave a little introduction, and then as I was talking, I said, "Look, can you all just make notes and do it in the mind map? Do it in the mind map. Draw some pictures. Go wild." And anyway, towards the end of the session, I got them to take photographs of their mind maps and upload it to ChatGPT, and they were blown away. And it's one of the things I really like about AI. It's instant. It's not like you plant something in the garden; you have to wait 6 months to see it grow. No, and it's not, and I'm not talking about cheap tricks either. This is real stuff. Anyway, so that was one. The other one happened today. A friend of mine's son came out of university, big debt, failed his degree. He was doing chemistry. He didn't get into the lab for 2 years. By the time they got into the lab, there was a queue a mile long. He was there at 4 o'clock in the morning doing an experiment that I used to do at college. It was his education was poor, lost interest, failed a couple of modules. He's now out of work and looking for a job. And he's got an interview tomorrow. So I said, look, send me the job spec, send me a CV, and let me have a look at it. Well, I've done a fair bit of career coaching. You do, in academia. But it sort of came to me in a flash. Stick it in ChatGPT.
I knew where this was going.
Ask ChatGPT to interpret. So Chat gave me, I limited it. So give me 10 questions to ask this person, as if I was the interviewer, and give me 10 questions that he should be asking the interviewer. I happened to have an hour spare. Called in to see him, went through it. I'm not a softie, I sort of, especially if I haven't got much time. So I sat him down and said, right, I'm going to grill you. Here we go. And I tell you what, David, it was superb. It gave him a reference point. He knew it wasn't me. It wasn't me asking him these questions. That mattered. Yeah. So, and when you look at some stuff that P.R. Smith was talking about last week on his radio show, whatever he does, talking about, we have concerns about sentience, and we have concerns about, ChatGPT doesn't have emotions. Well, sometimes you don't want an emotional conversation. You just want the detail, you want the facts. An example of that is people with mental health situations. And I am seeing more and more evidence, and this is not maybe statistically proven, but would you tell your inner secrets to somebody who will have their own bias? We're concerned about bias with algorithms, but algorithms don't have ulterior motives.
True.
They might have bias. It might be unconscious bias. It might be conscious bias. It might be weightings. I put weightings in mine. I thought, back 10 years ago, LinkedIn was a more appropriate platform than Instagram for
100%.
Businesses, arguably. Yeah. So we put a weighting in there. That wasn't a bias. It was an opinion, and it was factored in. So bias, it exists in humanity. So it's bound to exist in algorithms because they're the product of humanity.
Yeah.
But we don't put ulterior motives into algorithms, and you do get those in the boardroom, you get them in the classroom, you get them in society. So let's get over this bloody anxiety about bias.
No, it's a good point, and I think you and I talked about this the other day, and it goes back to the podcast that I posted last week, which has turned out to be way more controversial than I sort of intended or ever thought it would. But a lot of people reacted very viscerally to the thought of someone, particularly an adolescent, talking to a machine instead of talking to a human. And my point was, and look, I'm not invested in the company. I don't have anything. I just thought what they were doing was really interesting. And I thought that it might be helpful for people who struggle to talk to people, particularly after COVID, where you've had a whole generation of young people who didn't go to school, who missed out on a couple of years of socializing in person that they would have had normally. And they probably might struggle more than the average person to talk to someone. And I thought it was a really interesting way to use AI. But some people they really don't like the thought of it. And so I may go back and revisit that again. So I'm glad you mentioned it. And I agree with you. I think for some people, it may be easier. And like you said, it's non-judgmental. And I think that might be an interesting factor in it, that people will feel that they're not getting judged. And it's interesting that you said that young man, kind of knew that it wasn't you sort of being really pointed and grilling him personally. It was, look, I've got a set of questions here that, that I think are interesting, and I just want to ask them to you. And that's a really good use for it. I'm surprised every time I talk to someone, I get some different creative use that someone's done with AI, even if it's just something like that. It's amazing. I love it. It's so good. And that's part of the reason why I love having these conversations.
I'll give you another example. I was teaching, what was it? It wasn't CIAM, it was Institute of Professional Sales Management or something. And I was doing, it's not my normal subject area, but, and I was teaching on financial management. And there was an equation in there, lifetime value. So lifetime value and marketing, we talk about it. But we're not. Some of us aren't as statistically savvy as maybe we should be. Partly because we don't teach at university anymore. Because maybe some universities do. So let me get that factually correct. But at the universities I've taught at, a lot of the statisticians had left a long time ago, and therefore your marketing students, when they do something like SurveyMonkey can return a huge data set. You can get a great sample size because it's so easy. Mum, dad, next door neighbour, everybody in the local sports club, you get huge volume of responses. But we're not teaching interrogation. We're not showing our students how to get deeper into the numbers and do the cross correlations and everything. Cross what? I forgot. I can't speak properly now.
Cross correlation.
Correlation. But we're still getting information out of that data, and that is my worry. That we don't just take data at face value. We've still got to learn the skill of interpretation. So to go right back to your original question, what skills do we need? We need to learn how to ask better questions. The future skill. One of our great skills, as many of people have learned how to type rapidly. That's a natural progression. So will be a natural progression to asking better questions, because you better the question, the more appropriate the response. And to that point, I would also like to add that the cost of data processing is a real cost on the environment. So the example I gave to the students the other day was, if Taylor Swift puts something up on Instagram and she gets 1 million hits in a nanosecond, where does that data come from? What's happening with that data? And of course, there's a spike in data usage in some data warehouse somewhere. So that data warehouse is typically, but not exclusively, is in some sort of remote place. That remote place is typically a desert. The desert is in what we might call a third world country or sub-Saharan country. And we're using water to cool the air conditioning units that cool down the data in countries that can ill afford to expend their water consumption. I don't know, it might have come from you or somewhere where I saw that Google searches use 1/10 of the amount of water or energy that a ChatGPT search uses, which is 1/100th of what a cryptocurrency calculation produces. So my mission is to democratize AI responsibly and try and get enough, try and make some dent in the population that uses less prompts but does them better. That conserves energy.
And it's great because I was just waiting. I was like, there was a brilliant segue to get to that, because I know that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about. But it's good that we got there in the end. I don't want this to turn into a massive. I mean, we can go 3 hours if you want, but I think the listeners for my podcast may not be used to that. So I have my sort of standard questions, which you'll be well familiar with. So I assume that you'll be ready to answer these. But I guess my first question is always, for you, is AI male or female?
I have listened to you ask this question many times. And didn't someone just yesterday we talked about, hey, my boat is a female. Boat's a female. Italian, in the Italian language, we sort of, we tend to have masculinity, femininity more than in the English language. So I understand why you asked the question. I think it's a fair question to ask. I have both. That's been Bob, which is my version of the chatbot that I'm using most. my granddaughter's called Bobby, so the name itself isn't a giveaway. But I don't know. I think can it be both?
Can be.
Is human male or female? Well, humans both.
Yeah.
So it's equivalent of human.
Okay, interesting. And so I know you have Bobby, which is your sort of your chatbot and AI that's on your website. So nadio.ai, if anybody wants to go play with it. But when you have a personal assistant that's an AI, because that's coming, and we'll have a tool soon where it can do everything for us. It can help us manage our schedules and book dinner appointments for us and all sorts of stuff. What do you think you'll name your assistant?
Oh, gosh. Well, I have somebody who worked for me a long time ago who we did great things together. We did great things. And she knows me. I use the GC Index. I don't know if you're familiar with the GCindex.com. Looks at proclivities, looks at your strengths, looks at your weaknesses. And mine's 10 out of 10 game changer and 9 out of 10 polisher. I think I'm about a 3 implementer and a 5 strategist. And it's those characteristics that when you complement those, you get stuff done. And so Viv's back on the scene. I've dusted her off. She's come out of retirement. She's loving learning about AI. So I think I would my nickname for Viv is Vivianda. So I would call my personal assistant Vivianda.
Okay. I like it. That's good. And there's a story behind it as well. So
there's emotion in it as well. Viv, was a fantastic person, and it's a real joy to. And she's going to be running the time banking project that we're doing as well.
Yeah, no, I know. I've met her. So, okay, so that's interesting. So, I guess the last thing is I always talk about the sci-fi because there's a lot of sci-fi, and I think a lot of the ideas that people have about artificial intelligence come from film and books that we've, sort of grown up with. So where do you think our future is going to fall? Do you think, again, it's that more, is it the Star Trek sort of perfect world, peaceful kind of universe where we're exploring, but, there really isn't any wars except for with like aliens? Or is it more something's going to happen? Maybe AI isn't going to kill us, but the civil unrest that comes from that is going to, we're going to descend into sort of a Mad Max kind of thing. Or do you see it as some sort of cyberpunk, sort of something in between? And I know we talked about this the other night, but I'm quite curious to see, where you fall on that scale.
I remember when I was at school and our teacher was off sick and the headmaster took our class, junior school. And obviously he'd not prepared and what have you. And he sat on the end of a desk, Mr. Lewis, he was called. He was great. And he said, okay, for the next hour, I want you to write an essay about what you think the future looks like in the year 2020. And and I think without exception, we said we'd all be playing more sport and we wouldn't be working as much. And I think I said we'd all be eating spaghetti and things like this. So I said then, and I hope, and I know hope's not a strategy, but I hope that we do cut down to 4 days a week. We do exercise more mentally and physically, and we use tech to do good. I believe it can and should and will. I believe that we reduce the impact of politicians. I think politicians, we don't need them as much anymore. Let's change some of that stuff around. No disrespect to them, but
that's a whole other podcast.
So we'll, and in and amongst that, I'm fearful that there will be still terrorism of some sort. But let's go positive. It'll be a beautiful world. It'll be healthier, happier, and we will work less for more reward.
Brilliant. I really like that. So we've talked about the CIM Level 6 award. We've talked about some of the events and stuff. We've talked about your website, nadio.io. Is there anything else that you want to mention to people or somewhere that you'd like to direct people to go before we say goodbye?
Oh, gosh. So connect with me on LinkedIn, Nadio Granata. I then will invite everybody that connects with me on LinkedIn into the AI Collective LinkedIn group. And from that group, I then invite them into the Mighty Network platform, which is where we store lots of white papers. We've got Mirella Lapota, her lecture on what is AI, etc., etc. So we've got loads of great stuff. We've got a little newsroom in there. So anybody that wants to learn anything about AI, from school leavers to thought leaders, come and join us in the AI Collective. Try and be proactive. Try and share stuff with us. We practice give as gain, so you get a lot from us. Give something back. Join the time banking. We'll set that up in the next, probably by the time this goes live, hopefully, etc. So that's about it. Age of Human, keep an eye on Age of Human. It's not the age of AI, it's the Age of Human. And let's keep positive, keep doing good.
I'll put all the links to all this stuff in the show notes anyway, so that'll be fine. So people can just look at the show notes and they can click through, and also on the episode on the website and that sort of thing as well. So Nadio, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. So thanks for your time. I know it's for people listening, it's 8:00 in the evening already, so we had to do it at the end of the day. But it's been a fascinating conversation, and I was really happy to have you. So have a good evening, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, David. All the very best.
The Creatives with AI podcast, the spiritual home of creatives curious about AI and its role in their future.